Welcome back. Today I'm going to try to solve some more puzzles. As with most people, I find it one of the best ways for me to learn tactics and practice them and recognize positions. So I'm just going to see how many I can fit in one video. Alright, we are on chess.com, where this is my highest puzzle rating that I had finishing any video. During my last video I made it to 2317, but I finished at 2310. So let's see what we can do here. This would be checkmate, except it looks like the opponent's queen is guarding that square. So it is not checkmate. Wondering if there is a way. It looks like this would also be checkmate if the queen wasn't guarding that square and the bishop wasn't in the way. So that led me to think maybe I should take the queen, and then when the bishop captured back, then the bishop would be protecting the rook this way. So maybe there's something else. If I took the bishop first, the queen taking would allow me to checkmate here, but in that case, wouldn't the rook take first? Wait. No, if I took the bishop, then I would be threatening checkmate in two different ways. I would be, for example, yeah, if I captured the bishop and the queen just took my queen, for example, then I would move on down here and that would be checkmate. Because, no, it wouldn't. Because the king would have that square. Oh my goodness. Well, it's a good thing I'm practicing then. So if I take the queen first, take the bishop first, then nothing's guarding the queen. And if the queen took back, I would have checkmate. That's certain. But if I took and the queen took me, I would take back, and then they would capture back here. So maybe none of those are the answer. If I captured and they took me and I didn't take back immediately, I went ahead and checked here, then they would come out and be threatening my rook. But then I could check here, protected by my bishop, and the king would have to go here, and then I would take their queen, and I would have a rook and a bishop, and they would just have a knight and a bishop, I think. Okay. Well, at this level, the puzzles get harder all the time, and I'm getting to the point where I can only calculate these things out for about 5 minutes, and then I just have to make a move. And it looks like we're at 4 minutes now. But I think it doesn't work out if I take the queen first, because they take back and they're protecting their rook from there. And then if I take the rook, they take back. And I just have a bishop left, and they have a bishop and a knight. So that's what leads me to think that this is the better move, because they only have so many options at this point. Once I've captured this bishop, then at that point, before they take back or before they do anything, we're temporarily equal on material. At that point, because right now they're up a minor piece. But once I capture the bishop, we're temporarily equal on material. We each have one minor piece, one rook, and one queen. Okay. Then they have a few options. They can take back with their rook, they can take back with their queen, or they could take here. So I have to consider each of those three options. I don't know which one would be best for them. So if I capture the rook, I think we already established that if they capture back with their queen, then I have mate down here on g2 with my queen, because their queen is no longer guarding that square. So I don't think they would take with their queen. So that eliminates one of the options. Okay, so I capture the bishop. One of their other options was to take back with the rook. If they take back with the rook, I think that's bad, because that leaves their queen undefended. Once I've captured the bishop, it has left their queen undefended. So I think in that case, I would just take their queen for free. So that is what led me to believe that once I capture the bishop, they will capture my queen at that point. And then they'll be up a queen before I make my next move. And I was thinking the way to protect my rook in that case, to keep it on the board, would be to take their rook with check, leaving them the only legal move, because their queen is down here now. So their only legal move would be to move the king out of check here. And I would need to avoid losing my rook. So I would move my rook to f1 check, where it would be protected by this bishop, and that would force the king to one of two squares. And then I would capture their queen. So that's what I'm going to try, because like I said, once I take here, it looks like they only have three real options at that point, and the only one that doesn't immediately lose in some way is for them to take my queen, and I would go ahead and take the rook, then check here, and then take their queen back. So I'm going to try that. Okay, that was it, and they did take my queen. Okay, so check, check, and then take the queen. Okay, that worked. And the theme of this puzzle, which is hidden behind my camera view, is Zwischenzug. Zwischenzug? That's not the same as Zugzwang, right? That's a different word. Well, I don't know what that word means, so I don't know if that's the right theme or not. But that puzzle was only rated, and you can see that up there, 1753. Okay, wow. Well, I definitely need to work on puzzles then. Okay, we're in a queen and pawn endgame, with my opponent being up a pawn, and both of their pawns are passed. My only pawn is passed, but my king is stuck behind it. My king can't get out because their queen is cutting off that whole file. Okay. I'm going to guess that my move is a queen move, and the reason I'm going to guess that is because my pawn cannot move right now. So that's off limits. My king, as I just said, cannot move to any of these squares because their queen cuts off that file. So the only king move I have available is king to h1. I don't think that accomplishes anything. Other than undefending the pawn and maybe making my king even more vulnerable. Although it's pretty vulnerable right now. My opponent has available checks on f4 and down here on d2, and of course if I moved it down there, they would be able to check me at the bottom, or move to d2 to cut me off on the second rank, maybe. So that's why I think it's a queen move, because the pawn can't move and the king only has one move that doesn't appear to do anything. What can I do with my queen? I can check. It looks like I only have one good check, and that's on f3. From f3, their queen couldn't really block because I would just take it. And of course from there, their queen can't capture me. So their king would be then separated from at least some of its pawns. My other check, of course, is here, but I don't think that's good because they would just take it. And then they would try to checkmate me down here. So I'm guessing my first move is queen to f3 check. But that gives their king a lot of options. Their king could escape out to the side here on to d4. And I mean, I would have a follow-up check at that point down there on d1, but I'm not sure what that accomplishes, because their king could just go back to where it is now. So, but if I checked here, their king also could go to any of these squares. And I don't know that I would have gained anything. Let me think about this for a second. One other option that I just thought of would be here. Queen to g2, and that's directly offering a queen trade, which normally I wouldn't want to trade off equal material when I'm down. But the difference here, the difference here is that if they took, I would take with my pawn, and my pawn would be one square from promotion. So I think because knowing that the computer, my opponent here, would not take my queen. It would do something else. I don't know what it would do. If it checked me, I could block with my queen on g3, and that would be a check, basically forcing the queen trade. They would take, and I would take, and then my pawn would be 2 squares from promotion, which is more than we can say for the opponent's pawns. But again, they're not forced to go there. Right here, they're not forced to trade queens, and they're not forced to go here to check me, allowing me to block with check. I don't know what they would do if I put my queen there, and that's the thing. That offers them a lot of options for, I think they would have to move the queen somewhere. They wouldn't just push a pawn or something, because then I would take their queen for free. So I think it forces a queen move of some kind, whether it's the trade or the check, but they could just make a neutral move, like put the queen on e3, which is not a check, blocks any potential checks. Well, no, because even if they did that, I could come up and check on g3. But maybe I could force a queen trade somehow anyway. Let's see, if I started with the check, which is more forcing. If they went back to any of these 3 squares, which were 3 of their 4 options at that point, then I would go to g2, check, directly threatening their queen, and that would force a queen trade. Okay, but what if they didn't go to any of those 3 squares? What if they went this way? What if they went to d4? Is there a way then that I could check and force a queen trade? I don't think so. No, because from there, what checks would I have? Not any good ones, I don't think. And that's the problem, because here that's not good. The king would capture. Here, I guess, but then the king could just go back to where it is. And of course, these 2 checks, their queen could just capture mine for free. And coming to here, the king would take me for free. So that's why I don't think that's good. Like I said, if they went to any of those squares, then I would have the game won by going to g2. But they don't have to go to any of those squares, so they would probably go here. And I could check them down there again, but then they could go back to where they were here. What in the world? Well, I just saw this other check possibility for the first move, but I think that's a bad idea. Okay. Just to throw everything out there. So it's got to be one of these 2 moves, right? Let me think about it. Also, I hear something beeping I've got to go check on. Okay, I've given it some more thought, and I think I'm going to go to g2 just because it's more forcing. Like I said, it directly offers the opportunity for a queen trade, in which case I would get my passed pawn And I think it forces their queen to move somewhere. I don't know where the queen would move, but I would hope that it would move to check me. After I went here, I'm hoping that the queen would do something like this to check me so that I can then check and force the queen trade at this point, because my pawn is closer to promotion than the opponent's pawns. And I think that's my only advantage here, right? Because I'm down material, and they have 2 passed pawns to my 1. Their king appears to be slightly safer than mine. So again, my only advantage, I think, is the fact that my passed pawn is closer to promotion than either one of theirs. And I think that's the more forcing move in order to exploit that advantage. So I'm going to try that. It might be wrong. It was wrong. Okay, so was the check correct then? Okay, the check was correct. All right. And they went to where I thought they would go. And I had no good follow-up there. That's why I didn't choose that move. At least I think I have no good follow-up. I have a check on f2. I have a check on d1. I don't think either one of those is better than the other. Either one of those allows the king to go back where it was. But then I'm behind their pawns, I guess. But I can't force the queen trade here, right? Either one of those is not a check. Then they can do whatever they want. Wait. The d1 check would allow me to swing back over here if I needed to. Which points at their queen, offers the queen trade again. Or is this one of those rare puzzles that I'm just supposed to look for perpetual checks in order to stave off a loss? Okay, that was not it. Was that it? That was it. Okay. But it didn't have to go there. It could have just gone back. See, that's the problem here. Oh no, if it had gone back, I could have come here. But I'm going to go there anyway. Okay. Well, that was only rated 2105, but it seemed much... Oh, and the theme is simple. I'm going to thumbs down that theme. The only theme that I can think of immediately was passed pawns. And is there an endgame theme? Endgame tactics? I'm going to select that. But it definitely was not simple. Okay. All right. Well, my goal is to learn, not to get a high puzzle rating. I have to remind myself of that. All right. It looks like we're in the process of transitioning from the middle game to the end game. Kind of. And the opponent has just taken probably a pawn here. We each have a queen, but the opponent has 2 rooks, and I have 2 minor pieces. So that means that I've, at some point, gone down in exchange. I got my bishop, and I had my bishop left, and they had a rook left. So they gave up a bishop for one of my rooks, apparently. Something like that. Okay. I have no idea what to do in this position. No idea at all. Nothing presents itself as a reasonable move. But let me go back to basic principles of puzzles. The first thing we look for is checks. This check is, I am almost certain, very bad because of the queen just taking my queen for no compensation. There is this check over here. Wait. Is this just mate? The pawn has to block. There's no other legal move. And then I take the pawn. And that's mate? That one doesn't have a theme, which suggests to me that it's a relatively new puzzle. Okay, so it's probably not rated correctly yet, but that's a mate in 2, and that one, it threw me off at first, but once I reminded myself to look for checks, it was very easy. So maybe that one is a little overrated right now. Okay. Well, that's good, though. I need to be reminded, just look for checks. Okay. Here, I have 2 checks to start off with, but I don't think either one of those is that good. I mean, my knight is kind of not doing really well right now. They can trade off their bishop for it at any point if they want to. Or this way. But yeah, I think that check just loses. It does lose a knight, but it allows me to put my rook down here with check, which they would then capture, but then I would capture back with my other rook, and I would be in a mating sequence because they would be forced to block with their bishop, and then I would take it with my rook, I think. This check over here doesn't quite do that because they would just capture back with their pawn. Okay, so this is my proposal. Check with this knight. What other options do they have? It's also a fork because it's aiming at that other rook and the king. So if the king just moved over to get out of check, either way, then I would take the rook for a knight. So I assume I shouldn't assume. I'm always surprised by the computer's responses. That's why I try to look and see what all the possible responses are. There's no other piece that can capture that knight. Knight to e7 check, except that rook. And the only other options besides capturing would be for the king to move out of the way. Just so we're clear, there's only 3 legal moves once I check there. And we've already said that if the king moves left or right to h8 or f8, then I take the rook and it's a material advantage. But if the rook captures me back on e7, then I'm pretty sure I have the check here with my rook on d8. Oh, but no, their rook could just go back then, guarded by their bishop and their other rook. I don't see anything else. I really don't see anything else. I mean, I could capture the bishop first in order trying to distract their rook off the back rank. But then I've gone down in exchange. Oh my. One thing I am seeing now that I wasn't looking at earlier is this bishop down here on a2. If the knight gets out of the way, that bishop is pointing at this pawn, so I don't know if that's significant or not. It might be significant in some way. For example, if I were to put my knight over onto b6, threatening that rook, their c-file rook, then I don't know what they would do, but I then would be threatening this check. But I don't think that's not that forcing, though, is it? I mean, don't they just move out of the way at that point? Because even if I did check with this bishop, they would just take it back. But then I could go here and my rooks would be connected, but then they would capture it with either their bishop or their rook. I'm starting to feel like this might be one of those days where sometimes you're your brainwaves are a little stronger than they are on other days. At least that's what it feels like. Another option is to put the knight back here, threatening that bishop. So this may not be about checks. It might be about a material advantage. Where is that bishop going to go? If I bring the knight back to b4, the bishop, I think, would have to move at that point. But it could just move there. But then it wouldn't be guarding that spot anymore. But the knight's still guarding that spot. Okay, I'm going to go back to the original check and see what happens. That was not it. Okay, I have no idea. Was it this? No. My other possibility was this. It was not that either, so I'm going to have to click the hint button. Those were my 3 candidate moves. None of the... Oh, wait, I did suggest taking the bishop. Is it that? It was that. What? And then here? Surely not. And now I win the rook. But why didn't this rook just take me? I know I would have had a check on the back rank, but then it could have just went back and blocked me. I'm going to click the analysis button. Oh, this looks like it's actually from a real game. Slobodjan and Richagov. Okay. Okay, so we did find out oh, they have to move first. Okay, they did that, which turned out to be a blunder, giving us a huge advantage. My chess.com logo's in the wrong spot there, but you can see that rook capturing c6 is the only move that takes advantage of that large boost in the evaluation. Knight to b6 is the second best move, and knight to b4 is the third best move. Okay, so if I take that, then they have several choices here, but their best is to take the rook, according to Stockfish, which they did. And then my only move that doesn't lose is to check here. So my question is, why didn't they capture it? It says because if they capture it, it's a mate in 2. How? Because I'm going to bring my... Oh, because when they block, I can just take it. Oh my god. I have no excuse for that. Again, my excuse is going to be that it's one of those days that the brainwaves are just weak. Okay. So back to this position. So what I had to know is that taking this would remove one of the rooks from the back rank, which is what I needed. And again, they had other options like king to h8 for some reason. But if they went to king h8, I'm still supposed to check. No. What? If they went to king h8, I'm supposed to play knight to c7, getting between my rook and their rook, which then makes this a hanging piece. Okay, what if they played king to f8 to avoid the potential check? Still, I'm supposed to play here. But doesn't that they just move their knight to a not very great position? Okay. I don't understand, but their best move was to take the rook, which is what I expected they would do to go up the exchange. And then I go here and win that rook. Because again, if they take me, it's a mate in 2. So their best move is to go here. Their second best move is to go there. Okay. Well, back to the grind. How long is this? Is already 30 minutes. Oh my goodness. I'm getting slower on these. Okay, I'm going to go faster. All right. Is it just taking the rook with check? It was. And then is it just taking that rook? Yes, because the bishop is pinned. Okay. Maybe faster is better for me. That's not true because I do really poorly in bullet. Okay, well, this is one of those that I have no idea. Take the rook, which then they will take back, and then I can play here. No, oh, I should have taken the bishop first. No, I shouldn't have. What in the world? Oh, I should have taken with the pawn. And then the bishop. Okay. Good grief. Well, see, going fast didn't help me on that one. I got the first move right, but... oh my. This is the opening. We're in the opening here. Okay. In a game, I have no doubt whatsoever that I would play knight to f3 here, threatening the queen to bump it back. Because I am not going to play this pawn move, which undefends the knight, resulting in a check and then a lost rook. I'm not going to move the knight because that results in a lost rook, I think. Is the queen about to be trapped in some way? Is that what it is? Let's see, if I move the knight, say here, threatening the fork down there on c7, I'm pretty sure they would just take my rook. And then, no, I can't trap it. Right? Because nothing's protecting it. If I go here, that doesn't... no, that wouldn't result in the queen being trapped either, because it would just get out. Oh, my initial instinct was correct. Okay. Then... now is there knight to b5 threatening this? Because it threatens the queen to move again. Okay. Oh, and from there the queen can't defend that anymore, so maybe that's it? Okay. Well, I'm going to stop then, because I've gained a net of 2 points since I began this little string, and that's frustrating. But we're going to keep hitting it, because the longer I go without doing puzzles, the weaker I get, the more confusing they are. But every now and then when I hit some of these puzzles, there's going to be bad days. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.